I'm like 90% sure it was like a gimmick or a gag, because like every time he would come around the corner with a guitar and then like they'd trade off, I was like side stage just losing my fucking mind, just laughing hysterically, because I was like, this is a hardcore fest.
Yeah.
These guys got a guitar fest. Like, what's going on?
Hey, what's up? This is Gabe from Belligerence, based out of Austin, Texas, and you're tuned in to the Scoped Exposure Podcast.
This thing is gonna bother me. Hang on. I don't mind talking about anything, so whatever you want to talk about, I'm cool with.
Okay. Well, I think I'm ready to go if you are. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure Podcast. We have two scene friendships coming together for this episode, Calgary all the way to Fargo, and joined today by a good friend, Jesse of Swing Low, Baltic to Boardwalk, and Snow and Flurry Fest. So I'm very excited to be chatting with him, and thanks for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, of course.
Yeah, Jesse and I have been talking about doing this for a long time. I think I originally hit you up to do an episode like right around when the pandemic hit and we were starting to do things through this kind of lens. But now we're finally here. I think it took so long because we were trying to get the schedule of multiple Snow and Flurry Fest promoters all in one call, but we were unsuccessful doing that.
It is what it is. I mean, the newest guy, Kyle, he's down in I think Oklahoma. I think he's in Tulsa right now, and Derek's in Minneapolis, and I'm here, and Jack, one of the guys who helps us, who's kind of a silent partner, but he helps. He's also located in Fargo, so we all do different things. I actually just last week quit my job that I had.
Okay.
Of like 9 years. I don't have any plans or anything, so I'm just kind of chilling. So I got a bunch of time right now. So
yeah, well, yeah, no better time than to rock a podcast, and definitely want to talk about Snow and Flurry Fest.
Sure.
Definitely like that was the very last festival that I got to go to before things kind of hit the fan, and a huge milestone for Scoped overall. But for the few folks at home who might not recognize who you are or the bands that you're a part of, give me a little bit of a formal introduction before we just keep running along here.
Sure. Well, my name's Jesse. I play bass in like a more melodic hardcore punk band called Baltic to Boardwalk, and then kind of a crossover thrash hardcore band called Swing Low. And I'm one of the people who helps book Snow and Flurry. I kind of at first wasn't really involved on like the booking end. I came up with like the name and like the logo idea, and obviously like that's kind of an homage / ripoff of Sound and Fury, and we can get into that if you want.
Yeah, we definitely will.
For sure. Yeah. But yeah, that's just kind of now I help book. It's mainly Derek who does a lot of the booking. He has a lot of the contacts, and he's more of a people person, but I still do handle some of the bands that play, and so we kind of like really all help. We try and pull our weight equally. Obviously some of us do more work than others, but it is what it is. When you got a lot of people helping, it kind of falls to certain people to do certain things.
Yeah.
Absolutely. At a certain point. So
yeah, I'm very excited to talk Snow and Flurry. Like I said before, big milestone for Scoped, and I remember that weekend was such a ride, and I remember we had a flight out of Minneapolis. I think it was like at 3 a.m. So after the fest was over, I think we just got you to drop us off at the airport, and then I was like falling asleep in the chair just waiting for our flight. But I remember did we get Taco Bell afterwards?
We did. Yeah, we went through the Taco Bell drive-thru.
Yeah. So I remember when we were crushing some Taco Bell, you were telling me some of the behind the scenes of the festival, how the name came to be, and some of those things. And I was like, man, there's a lot to unpack here. So I'm glad that we're finally sitting down and doing a podcast to talk about that and the bands that you're a part of. Before we get super into it, though, we got to check some bevs before the episode starts. You got a couple on deck, it looks like. So how about you go first, and then we'll take a swig.
I got the goated Gatorade flavor, lime cucumber, the best. I don't even care. Don't at me. It's the best. Everybody hates it. I don't know. I love it. And then I have a limoncello LaCroix, which is actually the first time I've had this one. It's super good. So
okay. So first off, never seen that LaCroix flavor, so that must be an American only exclusive.
Maybe.
We like once LaCroix hit the Canadian scene, we only had like 4 flavors, and then clearly there was there was demand there, and then now I think we have somewhere in the range of 8 to 12, but I know the States has a bunch of crazier flavors, but lime cucumber Gatorade sounds crazy. I would give that a check myself for sure.
It's so good, especially when it's like super hot or like in the middle of summer. The first time I ever found this, Swing Low was on tour in Texas down to play like Hard Times down in Texas.
Okay.
It was just so hot. We walked into a gas station and saw it, and I was like, that sounds refreshing. And it saved my summer, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it sounds like it's ultra hydration Gatorade, like, you know, cucumber water, but Gatorade essentially.
Yeah. I mean, there's a little bit of sugar in there too, but that's essential too, right?
Yeah. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how closely you've been following the show, Jesse, but we got a couple Bev sponsors here in the works. But by the time this episode comes out, which will be Friday, it will be my last week of work. And right now, and anyone who's been following the podcast for a little bit knows that I've been doing real estate photography kind of through the pandemic times. And right now is really crazy busy time. So shout out to anyone in the real estate game, because it's like a madhouse. So I have over 200 photos to edit after this podcast, to do for the next day. So I'm checking something to calm me out through the rest of this. So this is from our friends at New Level Brewing. And before I reveal the flavor, how do you feel about carrot cake?
I fuck with carrot cake.
Okay, so this is a carrot cake cream ale beer called Carrots Rule Everything Around Me. So apparently this has like a carrot cakey kind of aftertaste. So I'm
interesting,
kind of interested to give. This is my very first time having it, so I'm very intrigued on some of those things. So I'm gonna give that an initial taste and give you my thoughts.
For sure.
There's a little bit of dead air, but yeah, that's really interesting. Oh, okay, that's like a low delay into the like kind of a sugary carrot cake kind of vibe. So that's interesting.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, like New Level, like what was the word I'm trying to say? They are always surprising me with some of the crazy flavors that they have. Like they have everything from like a key lime pie kind of sour to something where I think when I did the Fuming Mouth podcast, they have a heavy metal horchata kind of beer that's very kind of similar to this. So yeah, got a shout out to New Level. Yeah,
that sounds wild.
Yeah, they're a bunch of wizards in their brewery. So yeah, I'm stoked on them. So Jesse, like I was saying, really excited for this podcast. For anyone who's a new guest on the show or a first time guest, I always like to get some context about how they got into heavy music. So take me back in time. Tell me some of the formative records and moments for you, just getting, putting you on the path that you're on, as far as like booking fests and playing in bands and touring. And that will kind of help set the stage for the rest of the stuff that we're going to talk about.
Sure. Yeah. So I don't know. I grew up kind of skating, when I was like 10, 11, 12, 13, I was like skating all the time. So naturally with skating kind of comes, like punk, or at the time, I guess when I was 13, that would have been like right at 2000. So it would have been like the heyday of pop punk. So I listened to like a lot of pop punk and stuff when I was skating.
Sure.
Like one of my first CDs that I ever bought, which is kind of weird to say because nobody buys CDs anymore. But when I was a kid, I was raised in a Christian household, so I could really only like buy Christian things or whatever. But I bought MXPX, Life in General.
Okay.
And fantastic record. But you know, it was on tooth and nail. They're a Christian band. So I, you know, was like, oh mom, like, let me buy the CD. They're a Christian band, you know? And she was like, oh, okay. And so through that, I just kind of like found more tooth and nail and Solid State Records stuff. So I kind of came up through more of the Christian side of things. Like I remember listening to like Zayo, you know, Where Blood and Fire Bring Rest, great record. Liberate, great record. And then through that, so I started listening to more of the like metalcore stuff, and then I kind of worked my way backwards to like hardcore from that.
Yeah.
And then by that time, you know, I was starting to kind of lose interest in the Christianity thing, and I started like realizing that there's a lot more to life than all of that. And I'm not knocking anybody who believes in whatever they believe in, just wasn't for me. You know, a lot of people kind of fall out of what they're raised in, you know. When you're raised a certain way, when you hit a certain age, you're going to start naturally kind of pushing back or questioning about things, and that's kind of where I was at. So
right
about the time I was like, I don't know, like 16, 17, I stopped like caring about all that stuff and started like, you know, being in bands. I was in a couple of like really bad like metalcore and like metal bands, you know, from middle school through high school. And I don't know, I was just kind of going to shows through, you know, just whatever I could find locally. It wasn't like, there wasn't hardcore shows. Like there was bands that were hardcore that would play in my hometown, which is Pierre, South Dakota. But it was just kind of like all shows. There was a punk shows and rock bands. It was all DIY stuff booked by like this local dude who was a legend and just had crazy connections and like brought crazy bands through that. Like I didn't even realize until years later. I was like, oh, I saw this band. That's crazy. And, you know, it was like through that I just like started liking live music and DIY music and punk, and really got into like live shows that way. And then, you know, once I was in my 20s, I started trying to go to like exclusively like hardcore, like metalcore shows and stuff like that. And I don't know, then I eventually moved up here, and, you know, joined a couple of bands and started just getting really involved in like that aspect of like actually, instead of just going to shows, like being a part of the shows, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's a few things that I want to unpack there. You know, the first being, you know, just your upbringing. Like you know, very similar to mine, you know, grew up in a Christian household. Like even it's really weird to even think about this, that this was even a thing. But because the normal thing that, you know, I realized being on the other side of it now is like, you go to like a middle school and then you go to high school and those kind of things. And I went to a K to 12 Christian school. So it was like, you know, I was in the same building for like 13 years, 5 days a week essentially. And so, and even on that regard, like the church that my family attended was attached to the school. So you add like Sunday morning in there, and I'm always like running around the halls and just being a goon and, you know, those kind of things. But I do agree that like a lot of people, I'm starting to realize there's more people in hardcore that came up with that upbringing of, you know, maybe just having like a Christian upbringing, but maybe have just come to terms and made their own, I guess like pieces with certain things. Cause you know, I think it was similar with some of those things with myself, where it's like, man, like there's like, I had a phase like, you're right out of high school where it was like, I understand a lot of the things that I was taught, but like, I don't like a lot of people who like call themselves Christian are not just good people, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah, I mean, I totally agree.
yeah,
But like I said, I'm not trying to shit on anybody or yuck anyone's yum or anything like that. Like, if believing in that gets you through your day and you actually are a better person because of it, like, good on you. I just, like, the particular part that I was involved in just wasn't. And it was a really hard realization when I realized, like, I could just step away from this and I'd feel a lot better. And
yeah. Mm-hmm.
It just sucks because, like, I'm an old man. Like, I'm 33. I'm turning 34 this year. And like the last like 10 years have been really, like, once I hit like 20, 21, 22, 23, I started to realize, like, man, I have like a lot of these like unknowingly like bad characteristics or problematic behaviors that I've been like kind of just ingrained into that I had to like reverse track on and start unlearning. So it's like, being a human being and like a good fucking person, it's like, it's an everyday, you gotta I'm still finding stuff like every day where I'm like, I gotta fix this. I gotta work on this. I gotta do better here. And it's like, if I could go back and like talk to, 15-year-old Jesse and be like, listen, get out of this right now. And like, it's okay to do these certain things and it's okay to change a little bit. And it's okay to like not agree with this stuff. You don't have to like take it just because people are telling you. And like, I would have been completely different path, but you can't really change your past. You can only change your present and your future. So it is what it is, so
yeah,
just got to keep looking.
Yeah. I like when I look back at some of those things, like, I don't like, oh, I wish I was raised differently or some of these things. Like, I think a lot of the moral standing and ethics that I have came through like the church and some of those things. But at the same time, I think I've come to that like realization and understanding where it's like, just because like this is what I was taught for so long doesn't mean I necessarily need to like, like being a Christian or whatever, like, looks so different to so many people. So like,
right.
Just and this is more just like reflective of myself, just like really struggling with like people in the church who would be like, yeah, love your neighbors, but like you can't be gay. And I'm like, that
Right.
like there's huge contradictions in a lot of those things. So I think for me, it like really boils down to like, just be a good fucking person. And like,
Right.
like whether you, like you were saying, like, whether you believe in something of a higher power, I think that's an entirely different conversation. But like, to tie it back to the music, I do think that a lot of those Christian labels or Christian bands, maybe at the time not really realizing the whole Christian music machine and marketing strategy, still put a lot of youth, including myself and you, onto bands. I remember listening to Inhale, Exhale. I've been jamming a lot of Haste the Day over the last couple of days, actually.
Yes.
Demon Hunter, As Lay Dying, Emery, like shit like that, just like to get me like, if there was such a divide of like Christian music, like quote unquote can't be heavy, like, like I think hardcore would look, it would still exist, but I think it would look a little different as well, as far as the different kinds of people that made its way into it.
Oh, for sure. I agree with that, and it is what it is, for better or worse. There's a lot of good bands out there that just happen to be Christian bands. I mean, like Ex Disciple XAD, they were pretty dope out of Erie. Notice and Victim. I mean, it's kind of meme worthy, but like some of the music's good.
Right.
Some like, the Face Down Records stuff from like the mid '90s, mid to late '90s, early 2000s, like Dodging Bullets, dope. Like there's like so many cool bands from that like era, and it's like, I still listen to some of that stuff. I'm not gonna lie, some of it goes hard, so it is what it is. Kind of recognition that band goes hard.
Yeah I've been, like I was saying before, like jamming a lot of Haste the Day, and I think the first album with like the skeleton of the bird, I forgot how hard Chorus of Angels hits, and just like
Mhm.
this is like a 6-minute like breakdown song, and it's just
Yeah.
it's super heavy. So shout out to anyone that fucks with that. Since we're on the topic, do you have like an all-time favorite, call it Christian core, spirit filled hardcore band that you're like, no matter how I feel about that whole part of my life, I'll always jam this record or this band?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I would say probably I would say, yeah, Where Blood and Fire Bring Wrath by Zao. I listen to that record a lot. And
Right.
I mean it's metalcore, but you know what I mean. It is a product of that time. It came out, I think, 97-ish, maybe 96, maybe 98. I don't know, somewhere around there. And music around that time was really kind of just that was happening. So it is what it is, but that record is really good.
Yeah, no, that's a great pick. So, you know, the other thing that I wanted to break down on your original kind of tangent of just getting into it, like, you know, just talking about just like how it was like you were going to live music events, but it wasn't necessarily like 4 different hardcore bands all playing on the same night. It was all kind of mixed bill kind of stuff. And that was very similar to me as well. Just like I could go to something and it's like I can see the pop punk band, the really cringy metalcore band, even an acoustic artist, and then some kind of like punk rock kind of band. And so I felt like that kind of whet my palate to a bunch of different things that I'm realizing a lot more now. Like, you know, like I know like on some hardcore podcasts, like 10 years, even 5 years ago, if you were like, I like Youth Crew, but I also like death metal, you'd be like, there's no way you could like both of those things. But there's a lot of people out there that are just like, I'm down for like a bunch of different styles of like loud music.
Oh, for sure. And I, honestly, like mixed bills are so cool. And anytime we can like put a band that fits but isn't necessarily a hardcore band on like Flurry, we do every time. Like I think it was Flurry 4. It was the last one we did in Fargo. We had a death metal, like a slam band on there called Mutilatred out of Ohio.
Oh,
super dope. And it went over really well. Everybody really liked it. So it was like, you know, it fits, and you can put whatever, wherever, as long as like, you know, most people are down, you know. Like last year I went to LDB, not last year. We missed a whole year. So the year before, I guess. It would have been 2020.
2020?
Yeah, I think LDB happened in 2020 because it's in February.
Yeah,
so,
it was the last fest ever so far.
So I made it down to that for the first time. That fest is so sick. But they had God, what's Pat's new band?
Fiddlehead?
Yes, Fiddlehead. The reaction to Fiddlehead was crazy. And like that band is so good. And they're insanely good live. And I mean they're hardcore-esque, you know, without using the term like adjacent, you know, they're kind of hardcore adjacent, but they're also like, you know, just a rockin' band. You know, it's cool. And like anytime something like that can happen, we always try and do it. So it's like 2 days of just the same is, even if it's slightly different, it's like it's a lot. So if you can throw something in there to mix it up, to like cleanse everyone's palate and give them a refresher and like just a little break, it's like sometimes those are some people's favorite sets, you know. Like those, you throw a weird like a pop punk band in there, or like a, you know, like a grunge band, like, you know, Title Fight or something, and like it just breaks it up enough where people are like, that was super dope, like thanks for putting that on, that was one of my favorite sets. And like we try and do that every year. Sometimes it doesn't happen, but I think it's super important to show the diversity of like of the hardcore scene. You know, it goes from super fast punk rock to, you know, down to death metal. Like it runs a gambit of all of that, and it's important to show every aspect of that if you can. So.
Yeah, and especially for festivals that are like double digits worth of bands, multiple days, like you know, talk about festival fatigue. That I think that sets in a lot quicker if it's kind of the same old song and dance 10 different times. But I do agree. I think when DPK had their 5-year anniversary. I think on the last show night, it was Mortality Rate, Woolworm, Ingrown, Living with the Lions, and Comeback Kid. And I'm pretty sure in that order. So you got like a metallic hardcore band. You have like a jammy, like again, like hardcore S, but like kind of more like a lot softer. I think Warm, yeah, I think that they played that day. And then you have Ingrown, which is just like manic power violence from Boise. And like there was all this like Boise hype from that whole weekend. So that was crazy. Then you have a pop punk band. And then you have like Comeback Kid, which is like a staple Canadian hardcore band that like a lot of kids on that night were only coming to see them. But again, for anyone who was there, anyone who was there for for that entire span of bands, it's like that's 5 different experiences. So it's not just like here's the band that has the fast parts, and then it's like, oh, here's the band that has the panic chords. Like, you know, there's I think that those guys played that very, very well on that regard.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, Comeback Kid. Whoo, Comeback Kid is so good.
Yeah.
Turn It Around is what I should have said instead of Zeo Liberate or Zeo. When I said earlier, when you were like, oh, favorite record from that time, it should have been Turn It Around. I don't know what I was thinking, but that record is fantastic. That band is fantastic.
Yeah,
man, I love that band.
Yeah, it was you know, obviously being like born and raised in Winnipeg myself, like I got plenty of opportunities to see crazy shows that they played locally. And you know, like it was always this thing, like they have like this generational gap of like they have fans who are like my age, people younger, and then people older. So even people that don't go to shows normally anytime, it's like Comeback Kid's playing. All right, like let's have the crew roll through. And I remember one of the craziest times I saw them was when they did their turnaround 10-year anniversary kind of stint of shows. I think they called it 10 It Around. And, you know, they had Scott Wade come back and do vocals for that entire tour. And oh my gosh, it was a madhouse. Like I remember standing in the back, but still felt like I wasn't 100% safe. Like there was just like chaos everywhere. Super loud gang vocals for that entire set. So it
Awesome.
pains me because I think that was just before I started filming shows. So like if I had captured that on film, you know, I'd land me some hits on the YouTube because it was a badass show for sure.
Sure. Was that would have been what, 2014, 2015?
I think
2015.
I think 14. I'm gonna fact check it because we're diehard Comeback Kid fans here.
Yeah, that would have been. Yeah, that would have been a crazy show.
Even 2013, because Turnaround came out in 2003.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I actually saw Comeback Kid kind of by accident once. I went to Rainfest. I've seen them several times. So Rainfest 2011, Figure 4 played, and one of the headliners was supposed to play. They couldn't make it for whatever reason. They just didn't make the journey. So it's like Figure 4 was there. So all of Comeback Kid basically was there.
Right.
And Scott Wade was there. He was like DJing an after party. So as a surprise headliner, they did like a 6 or 7 song set. I think it might've been 6 with, it was Comeback Kid, but he was doing vocals. So like Andrew was playing guitar.
Oh, very cool.
So dope. It was like, hey, surprise headliner, like very short Comeback Kid set with Scott Wade. And I was like, I'm so glad I came to this. It was so good.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. Like I'm a fan of both kind of eras of the Comeback Kid vocals, if you want to call it that, with Andrew and Scott Wade. I think there's a lot of really good bangers on Die Knowing and their latest album that they put out. But Scott just had that like that perfect kind of yell hardcore style of vocals. So
yeah, you know, I agree.
Getting to see that at least once when he's been out of the band for a long time was something that I hold dear for sure.
Oh, it was a very cool experience when I saw it too. So I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah, we've set some of the groundwork. I didn't know that you were actually, I guess you were born in South Dakota and then moved up to Fargo. Is that the
Uh,
correct timeline?
I grew up in South Dakota. I was born in Iowa, and then me and my mom and my sister moved to South Dakota when I was in 1990. So when I was 3,
Oh, okay.
there, and she married my then stepdad. So I grew up on like a farm kind of outside of a town. And I actually, when you were saying you went to a K through 12, I actually went to a K through 8 country school until 7th grade.
What's a country school? Oh, just not like we're teaching everyone how to be a cowboy and like honky tonk.
I wish that's a cool idea. No, it's just like a one room shack basically, where there's maybe 2 kids in each grade, maybe one, maybe not even a grade. Just K through 8. One teacher just teaches everybody.
That's
so it was
so weird. You're on grade 8. You're like, I've been here the whole time. I know all these lessons already.
Yeah. So I went there kindergarten, and I think 1st grade I went to a different school, and then 2nd grade through 7th I went to the same. It was called Prairie View.
Prairie View.
Very interesting time.
Yeah.
But then I went to a regular middle school in 8th grade, and it was interesting. I don't know. It is what it is. Middle school is fine. It sucks. High school sucked a lot too. Like high school sucks. I don't know. Maybe it's different now, but like it sucked for me. So
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it was like not like in the top tier of like popularity. I was like maybe not the bottom of the barrel, but I was like in that weird like I feel like no one's got issues with me, but like no one's like favoring me, if that makes sense. So
sure.
Yeah, like I don't know. I don't miss high school or school in general at all. Like I feel like adult life, although it comes with a lot of grievances and bullshit, is a lot better, I think, than like showing up and sitting in the classroom for half the day and then you have to go home and do homework. Like that's so strange to even think about it now, being out of school for so long.
Sure. I definitely agree with that. I mean, I don't like being in school, but like just being a kid and like the summertime, like waking up whenever, grabbing a skateboard and skating down to like meet up with your friends or whatever. Like I miss that. I miss not having to worry about like money and stuff. That kind of sucks, but like it is what it is. You know, it's the trade-off, I guess.
Yeah,
you get a little bit of freedom,
the trade-off,
but you don't.
for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I do remember vividly like, well, I can watch cartoons for 5 hours and then play Halo for another 4 and then go to bed at, midnight or whatever. So, gone are the days of that. So, I did want to talk to you about Fargo because I think, growing up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, like that was the US state that was closest to us. So like aside from even hardcore, like going down there and getting to be like, oh, okay, this is kind of what this is like. But I think what really kind of started to open my eyes to like the music scene there was when you guys came up and played I guess like what was at the time called Southern Alberta Hardcore Fest, or no, you guys played Western Front 2017.
Yep. Western Front.
Yeah. So that was the first time that I got to see you guys, and that was the first time that I was like filming as Scoped, and so that was just like a cool experience of like, here's a band that I'm not getting all these ample opportunities to film. The video like the set popped off, so the video popped up by association, but like, getting to like build a relationship with yourself and Don and all the rest of the band, and just starting to meet other people from the Fargo area. But when we think about like American hardcore, like I'm sure like Fargo isn't one of those places that people are like constantly like thinking about or talking about all the time. So
never, honestly. And like there's been some really sick bands from the Fargo area. And I'm not speaking on myself here, but one of my favorite bands from the area is called Life Won't Wait. And I mean, they haven't been around for a long time, but their Drifter EP, it's good. It's a little more on the melodic side, but like I like everything. So it just hits me hard. Like it's so good.
Yeah.
That was kind of the point of when me and Derek started talking about doing Snow and Flurry. We're like, listen, there's a lot of sick bands in Fargo of all genres, to be honest. And like, it's kind of a place that gets overlooked. So we're like, fuck it. Hardcore fest in Fargo, because why would that make sense? It doesn't make sense, but like, let's do it anyway because it doesn't make sense.
Right.
And he was like, yeah, like, okay, I like that. And we started talking in like 2014 about it. And I kind of already had like the name picked out and all that. And he was like, okay, well, like, why would you want to call it this? And I was like, well, because it's going to be in the middle of December. It's going to be snowing. And at this point, Sound and Fury had taken a break. So they did 2011 and 2012 back to back. I went both of those years. And then 2013 was the year that they had like a weird fest kind of booked. It was like one of the headliners was like, what's that band? The Ghost Inside.
Oh, okay.
There was like, so it was a mix, but it was like still hardcore leaning, obviously.
Yeah.
And like, for whatever reason, like the fest just kind of didn't happen. And they like put out an announcement like, hey, we're not doing this right now. We're not going to do it for a while. We might be back. We might not. And the 2 years that I went, 11 and 12, were great years. I had a great time. I love the whole vibe. I love California. I love California hardcore. Like, I was like, okay, cool. So like, I have this idea for a fest. I'm going to rip off the name since they're not doing their fest right now. Like, let's call it, Snow and Flurry, and let's kind of mess with it a little bit. Like, let's kind of rip the logo. Let's flip the and. Like, if you notice, like the and is like the other direction on ours.
Yes.
Not the same way. And we put the little snowbanks and snowfall in the Flurry, and it's very similar. Obviously, it's an homage. It's not a rip. We're not making fun of it. It's my way of being like, this is something that meant a lot to me, and like, I want to pay it forward. And then I didn't know they were coming back. And the first year that we did it was December 2015.
Yeah.
And I think it was the second day of the fest, they announced their lineup coming back.
Oh, they didn't tweet during the fest.
Yep. They were like, hey, we're back. And I was just like, this is going to be not great. Like, people are going to like look at us and be like, well, fuck you guys, which a lot of people did. Like, the first couple of years, we got a lot of hate. Like, yo, fuck you guys. What do you think you're doing? Like,
just people being like from California being like, oh, you're being disrespectful or something like that.
Yeah, just people from wherever. And honestly, at one point, the fest, Sound and Fury, did follow our fest, and I was like, oh
no.
But then they sent us a DM and they were like, yo, like, we like what you're doing. It's all love, like, keep at it. It's hard to do a fest, and anytime there is one, you just got to support each other. And like, that was cool. It was really nice to get those encouraging words from that crew. But once that happened, I was like, literally anybody can say anything about it and it's fine. Like, people understand it's a rip on the weather, and people understand it's an homage. And if they want to get mad about it, they can get mad about it. It's fine.
Right. But like, even the fact that it's not like, obviously there's like festival season. So like anywhere from like late April to like, July, like even outside of hardcore, you got like your huge things like Warp Tour when that was around, and Lollapalooza and all those kind of things. So, on the hardcore sphere, like I think last year, or even it could have been in 2020, but like 2019 for sure, it was like Wild Rose one weekend. Next weekend was the Rumble in Chicago, and then the weekend after was Promcore in Oklahoma. So like to have you guys, not only like, be playing up on like it's snowing and, this is this part of the country, but like to have it so late in the year, there's not as much like competition to my knowledge of other hardcore festivals that are normally happening around that time.
Yeah. And that was also some of the the idea too, was like, we don't want to step on anyone's toes. We're already going to be stepping on toes with the goofy name.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, with the goofy name, people think it's kind of a joke. And I mean, the first couple of years, the lineup was a little bit more just regional. There was a couple of signed bands and whatever, but it was mainly just like tri-state area stuff and like a few bands from like other states, and we tried, but you grow every year, right? So you start small, get a little bigger, you get a little bigger, and then, it rolls. But that was the point. It's like, well, let's put it in the middle of winter. So it's shitty to get to, right? And then like it's also out of the way, so like the closest fest is like, I think Promcore's it was supposed to be in October last year.
I think it was rescheduled. It's originally in May, but I think Aaron was trying to do it in October.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Yep, that's what it was. But I think the closest one to us then is LDB, which is in February.
Close. I think I guess the actual closest would be FYA, which is at the very start of the year. I think that's like,
you're right.
Yeah, because FYA always seems to land over my birthday weekend, and it's either like, do I want to go for my birthday? But then usually there's already plans in place with Bryn and I was like, well, maybe another year. And I think when shows come back, I'm just gonna be like, get me to every hardcore festival that I can get to.
Right. Yeah, I forgot about FYA. I haven't made it down for FYA yet. I plan to do that soon, so hopefully that happens this year or very shortly.
Let's
weird.
make a pact. When shows come back, we can both go to the next FYA together. It's on the podcast.
You got it. Absolutely.
But yeah, like even if we're going back before like November, December-ish time, because I think the first time that I knew about Snow and Flurry was, I think it was like either very beginning or mid December, but the first time that we came down to document it was in like early November. But I don't even think there's many festivals happening in the August, September, even October time to my knowledge.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think it's because of the start of school and like kids go back from their hometown to college or whatever, and like everybody's just kind of doing stuff. And that was kind of part of why we moved. So we moved from Fargo to Minneapolis. That move I would like to have done after 5 years. I wanted to get to 5 years in Fargo, but at a certain point, it's like we were kind of fighting it. Year 4 was great, but it was a little tough. It was real. We ended up having a couple of bands drop that were like kind of, a little bit more expensive, which actually ended up being a blessing. It sucked, but it ended up being a blessing. But it just, December, like we always try to do the first week, or if it was early enough, the second week in December, because it was too close to Christmas. But then the week we would do it would be finals week for college.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Because it was finals week. So then we were like, okay, well, when we move cities, we should also move it up a month. So it's in November, because it snows a little bit more and a little earlier in Minneapolis, I think, because they're right on the river.
Are you trying to plan the festival around like when it might snow? Because I feel like everyone else is like doing the opposite.
Well, we were hoping that it would kind of avoid the snow, but it ended up snowing the first day anyway. Not last year, but 2019. It was like, it was all nice and we got all loaded in and everything, and then it started snowing and I was like, oh, all right, well, it is what it is.
Yeah. No, it's too. That's too funny. So let's talk about that move, because growing up so close to Fargo, like could easily rip there in like a 3-ish hour drive, and like we've talked about this as well, and I think I've mentioned here on the podcast. Like the first time that we got to film Snow and Flurry was 2019, but like I was trying to film that fest like going back, like I think even to like 2017, 2018. And it's always all those years leading up to 2019 where like there was an actual snowstorm where the highways were closed and I couldn't drive down, or like the timing of the festival and starting a new job just wasn't, in the right alignment. But
Mhm.
like that was always like something that was like, it's literally so close to me. I should, I was trying my best to make that happen. When we were talking, I think we originally were putting around the idea of, having scoped document. It was around Wild Rose 2019, and I think that's when you told me originally that the move to Minneapolis was happening. So
Mhm.
obviously built up a lot of, oh yeah, we're doing this like hardcore festival in Fargo of all places, and it makes sense to maybe I feel like with any growth, whether it's like a hardcore thing or not, like, some festivals might have to change venues for growth reasons, maybe making something all ages. And there's always some criticisms of like, oh, this is inconvenient for me, or like, why are you guys doing this? Blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
So, like, obviously, I'm sure that there was a little bit of not pushback, but like some people from Fargo being like, oh no, I have to drive to go to the hardcore festival versus everyone else who maybe was coming up from Minneapolis.
Right. Well, and here's the thing, like I still live in Fargo and the fest is based in Minneapolis now, so I have to drive to do my own fest. It is what it is, but
Right.
it's like there was a few people, and honestly, like the coolest thing about the first 4 years is like, everyone here was like, this is ours, like this is great. And when I was like, hey, like we're probably going to move it to Minneapolis, logistically it just makes sense. The drive from Des Moines to Minneapolis is like the drive from Fargo to Minneapolis. It's like 3 hours, but the drive from Des Moines to Fargo is like 7+. So if you want to get like the Des Moines crew to roll out, it makes more sense to have it more centrally located. So it's basically the same distance to drive from Fargo to Minneapolis as it is to drive from Des Moines to Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the people who still want to go from Fargo, which a lot of people last year did, there was a lot of Fargo people that, win every year that still went last year, which is really nice. And some people didn't. And that's fine. I get it. It sucks to travel. It sucks to get hotels or Airbnbs. It sucks to try and hit up your friend to stay with them. And I get it. I understand. So there's no like ill will from me to other people who decided not to go or whatever, but it is what it is. There's always, a little bit of growing pain, like you were saying, but every year we've switched venues. Every single year it's been a different venue. So
Okay.
the first year was at the New Direction, which was a DIY all ages venue here for a really long time. But by the second year it had closed. So we lost the New Direction. So the first year was at New Direction. The second year was at a bar venue upstairs called the Aquarium. And that was a year, there was a huge snowstorm that year and a bunch of bands got stuck, so we just had like a bunch of bands that had already play like second sets the next day or like second sets later. I mean, everybody volunteered for it. It was a good time, but it was a lot. The third year we did it in this closed down bar called the Nestor. And honestly, that was probably my favorite year. It was empty. They had a stage in there and they were like, you can take the stage when you leave if you want. Like we just had to like hire in some lighting and sound guys and whatever. And it was a really good time. And we ended up stealing the stage because we used the stage for year 4. And that was at a building called the Brown Building, I think, or the Brick Building or something. So all these places are in Fargo and they're all different venues everywhere. And then year 5, we did at the Garage in Burnsville, which is technically outside of Minneapolis, but the Garage was cool because they had all the lighting and the sound, but we did have some issues. Nothing I'm going to air out here. It is what it is. I want to leave that option open in case we need it again. Like I'll work with him again for sure, but it would have to be a little bit different under different circumstances. We'd have to get some things in writing and stuff like that. And that's just something we didn't do. And that's kind of on us, but we're trying to get a little bit more, I don't want to, this sounds douchey to say, but like, we're trying to get a little bit more professional with it, so we're like getting things instead of just handshake deals or like
Right.
messaging back and forth. We're getting things in writing. We're signing things, we're agreeing to things, we're having meetings and stuff like that with like venues and sound people and stuff like that. We still try and do it as like DIY as possible with some bands, but like a lot of bands have agents now and stuff like that to deal with. And I'm not hating on that. It puts a different perspective into it. So you have to be a little more professional with things. So we're trying to be more like that, which is tough for me. And it's also tough for Derek, but it is what it is, so.
Yeah. It's a little bit different when you're talking with like a band like I Am, who's like on E1 heavy now, which is like, okay, you're a band that has people behind you. It's very different to be like, hey, Stepping Stone, do you guys want to rip down and do this thing? There's probably relationships in both bands, but like, again, like even some of the other bands that didn't make it, like, it seems like, and I don't think it's douchey to say at all. I think it's just, it just shows that you guys are very serious about, bringing hardcore, to that area of the States that, Minneapolis is like one of those areas that, obviously maybe has more, awareness aside from like Fargo, but still I think Minneapolis is probably like an underrated state. Like the Midwest as a whole has been underrated for a long, long time. So, maybe just on the fact of just like having all these not growing pains and just like a trial by fire process of, doing this fest, like what's one thing that what's maybe the biggest lesson that you've learned from doing hardcore, festival management and execution, that you know that you wouldn't have learned if you were just, doing the status quo and doing the band thing?
Well, so we kind of have this like ongoing theme. So like every year we switch venues, which sucks. It would really be nice to have like a place where we know what's going to happen like every single year to be comfortable, know. So that adds a little bit of anxiety. And then every year we also have, for whatever reason, sometimes it's just in the cards, bands drop every single year. And sometimes it's because things got moved around on accident, or like we didn't actually like confirm, we thought we did and we didn't actually. It's a communication issue, or sometimes it's snow, or like this last time 2019 it was like something completely out of anybody's control. There was an incident that happened, and one of the singers from one of the headliners ended up being in the hospital, and he couldn't actually make it.
Right.
Like the band they were on tour with was like the backing band for them. It's like the package just couldn't make it. It just wasn't happening. Right. And it was out of everybody's control. Really, you would like things like that not to happen, obviously, but it is what it is. It would have been sick to have Marauder play. It is what it is. Everybody felt really bad about it. It just is what it is. It was one of those things where it's like, what do you do?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that definitely hurt our draw a little bit, because we announced that like, probably 2 days before the fest, like, hey, by the way, this isn't happening anymore. And like, I know like a lot of Minneapolis old heads probably didn't show out because of that. And that's fine. It's harder when you're older. And that's something I'm learning too. It's like, as I'm getting older, it's like, it's harder to like, I mean, obviously there's not very many shows happening right now, and I'm not going to any of them that are. So it's like, it's been a tough, year and a half almost now on pretty much everybody. And it's like, I want to like start talking like, oh, like, let's get this thing going. Maybe we can roll out for fall. We'll just have to see. That's 6 months from now. We'll see. But it's like, I want to make sure that everybody is safe at all times, or as safe as possibly can be when there's, people flying around the room. But it's like, if it's not worth it, it's not worth it for the year. I don't want to take 2 years off, but if it happens, it fucking happens. It is what it is. There's no point in trying to rush anything. That's one thing that I've learned. It's like, some things are out of your control, and there's no reason to like try and push or rush if you don't need to.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I think that's a
It's gonna happen, you know. And if it can't happen, then like trying to jump through hoops to make it happen sometimes put you at a disadvantage. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting point. And yeah, I think like, anyone that books any level of a fest or even just a show in general, there is a a hefty amount of logistics and communication that needs to happen, and obviously there's people like that's like the second time I've almost spilled my beer, and I'm like having a little bit of anxiety. I got to watch my hands now. Um, but there's people like Joe Hardcore that do This Is Hardcore Fest, but like I know that he's got a team of people to help him
Mhm.
run the festival, help communication with between different things. Wild Rose is run by four different awesome individuals.
Mhm.
Snow and Flurry is run by like a plethora of good homies. So obviously there's a lot of people to ease the weight of all the different things that happen throughout that weekend, because
Mhm.
it's not as for someone like yourself, like you're stoked that you kind of curated this lineup and get to see people experience it and have all those kind of things, but at the same time, like, you are the one that people have to call on when it's like someone breaks their leg and you're like, okay, like, are we calling you an ambulance? Like, what are we doing here? Or like,
Mhm.
hey, this band broke a string, or like, all these things that start to come into play, and yourself and all the other people responsible need to be adaptive to make things you know this help keep the show keep going ultimately.
Mhm. Yeah, and like luckily, so far we've been pretty good about things like that happening. Like there have been a few injuries here and there. Obviously, like it's gonna happen at
Mhm.
a show regardless, and especially at a fest. It's a long day and a lot of bands, so it's like you got a lot of moving parts there. But nothing like really bad. And if anybody has, gotten an injury where they break an arm or a wrist or a leg or anything like that, or get cut open and need stitches, we have people who are like able to like, their friends are there. That's what's really cool about the first 5 years so far of the fest that we've done, is that not everybody knows each other, but everybody has enough friends there where it's like pretty much everybody's friends. There's a lot of like people from out of town that come too, but like they know people who know people and whatever. So luckily we've had enough people there where it's like, oh, this person. Could you like maybe get them to the ER, or like could you take them outside and we can assess how bad the injury is, and then we'll go from there. So we don't have to like call 911 or call an ambulance, but we would absolutely if we needed to.
Right.
This next fest, I really want to have like an emergency medical person there, which is something that I've never really thought of until just now. I've seen it at other fests,
Hmm.
and I'm actually going to write this down in my. I'm taking notes kind of for this potential, hopefully fest this year. We haven't really talked about it yet, but
Right.
the next time it rolls around, I would like some kind of EMT there. Hopefully, preferably somebody who's part of the scene,
Yes.
who has medical training or is a nurse or something, where they could be like, they understand what's going on. They're not going to be like, what the fuck is happening? What do you
Yeah.
expect to happen? Like somebody who's like down and
What do
they
you mean you
know,
broke your arm swinging on a guy's face? Like,
yeah,
it's
like
a lot
what do you
easier when
expect?
someone knows the culture for sure.
Yeah. So I'm going to look into that actually. So I kind of am glad that came up.
Yeah, we're doing brainstorming while talking about the fest. But I definitely think that there are some of those things where it is such a like anyone who's like younger might think it's like, oh, like it's such a like a boomer thing to like think about, like, is there water provided so people are like properly hydrating throughout the day, and is there people on
Mhm.
staff to like make sure people aren't like snooping around the gear area. Like there's all these
Mhm.
actual roles that really do matter, and I would probably think that there's a number of people in different scenes for their regional like fests who would be more than willing to volunteer and definitely don't do it as like a, well, if I can get a pass for a day, it's like you should just volunteer as like, it's just cool that people in my scene are like bringing all these bands into my weird little area. So yeah,
Mhm.
there's so
Yeah.
many roles to play for that for sure.
Yeah, we definitely have a bunch of people who are always down to help for sure. Like every year we book a fest, I kind of, once we get the solidified lineup, I kind of like send it over to Don, because Don's really good at like curating playlists. So Don from Swing Low, who
Of
sings,
course.
and every year when there's that Snow and Flurry playlist, that's usually curated by Don, and he's like, "Yeah, dude, like I'll absolutely do that. It costs me nothing, and I just love to support and like love to help when I can." And it's like he's on his phone, he's listening to Spotify anyway, so it's like I would do it, but I don't have Spotify. Like I don't use a music streaming service. I'll check out a band's Bandcamp, or I'll purchase the record or whatever. Like I don't actually like use streaming services, because like I think streaming services are kind of fucked up.
Yep.
But I mean, my bands are on streaming services, so I kind of know like the kickback for the streaming royalties is dog shit. So it's like if you get a million plays, you might be able to pay for your records to be up on streaming services. You don't make
Right.
anything off of that,
Right.
and it's not about making money, but it's just like it's rough. So, I don't really like it. It's kind of like renting music, but also at the same time, it's opened up a lot of people's worlds to a bunch of bands they would have never found.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
I understand why people love it. I don't particularly care, but it is what it is. So,
Yeah.
and like, that's just an example. Like Don's a homie for sure. He's always down to help whenever he can. So like, I love him for that. Like, he's like, yeah, like I'll make a playlist, no problem. And like, he picks songs that I wouldn't necessarily think to pick, and then puts them on the playlist. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's pretty dope. Actually.
Yeah, it's sometimes funny when you're doing things outside of just your own personal shit, where it's like it's a collective of a bunch of different people. So it's like, even though I feel this way about a certain thing, like it makes sense for the fest to have a festival playlist. Like, even if there's people that like maybe don't necessarily like want to have their band documented, they might actually realize, oh, it's probably a good idea to have someone, with
Mhm.
some influence to do that. But yeah, like I think, bringing up how Dawn picks songs that you wouldn't even think to pick. I think that
Mhm.
that's what separates a good playlist versus like, I just picked the popular song and then just went. Or
Mhm.
my biggest pet peeve, and this is coming from someone who makes a new playlist for Scoped every single Monday. I hate it when a festival playlist is just an album of the band, and then
Mhm.
like it's so unfair, because like I'll hit shuffle sometimes, but like if it's a band that has like four records and then one little band that has a demo, like it's just so much of that one bigger band, when like I like to balance it where it's just one of each,
Right.
or something like that. So yeah, playlist curation is a wildly overlooked talent, I think.
I agree. If someone was like, yo, make a playlist, it would be okay. But if I was like, yo, Don, make a playlist, it's gonna be good. You
Oh,
know what I
for
mean?
sure.
Like,
Definitely.
and it's not that our tastes are that much different. It's just that his ear is a little bit different. You know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. It's like some people have talents. Making a playlist is not one of mine. So,
Yeah. So the last known flurry that happened was number 5, I believe, was the last one. So that happened 2019, very first one that Scope got to film, last festival that I even got to go to. So like we were chatting for a while about that. So I definitely would like to hit on just like the aspect of that was the very first time that festival got to be, like, I wouldn't say documented, because I know that there are videos from past years, but maybe not to a level with like multiple cameras and like different things like that. So talk to me about like, what was the biggest benefit that you either took for yourself having us down there, or even just like the festival overall?
uh, I just thought it was really cool. In previous years, like it was just like people shooting a set from their cell phone, or like there was a couple of bands who brought somebody with them that filmed their sets or whatever, but like nobody that documented everything. And I think that was important. You guys documented every band, which, you know, that Oi, the hardcore punk Oi band, you know, which was one of my favorite sets from the weekend, you know, got documented, as well as like the headliners, you know what I mean? Like everybody, regardless of popularity, you guys were like, we're going to shoot the whole set. We're going to shoot photos. We're going to shoot videos. Doesn't matter to us. We're just here doing this for the bands. And I thought that was the best part, is that the bands got not only exposure, but they also got like promo, you know, like they could be like, yo, like, you know, we'll send you X. Can you send us the photos, or can we use the videos if we, you know, like compensate this, like to you guys. So like you guys get a kickback from it, but also the bands get like media they can post about themselves, that they don't have to like, they don't have to hire somebody to, you know, do promo photos for this or come shoot their show. It's like, it's already been done and it's out there. So that's just a benefit for them to be like, yo, we played this fest and like there was a crew there actually documenting, and like this was our set. Like I think it's just like such a cool concept. And we were trying to get you guys down for a couple of years, and we were trying to get, you know, we were in talks with like some other people trying to come document. And at the end of the day, I was like, you know what, would it make more sense to go with and don't take this the wrong way, I'm just like, this was my mindset at the time. I was like, would it make more sense to go with like a Sunny or, you know, 197 Media or whatever, or with the homie that I know and I have a connection with? And it's like, maybe for the long term, it would make more sense to use a bigger name. But to me, I was like, you know, those people do great work, and maybe in the future sometime, I'm not, you know, saying no, but for now, it's like you guys are the automatic go-to for me, just because you're easy to work with. We are already friends. Everybody who works with Scoped is great. You guys do great work. So like, as far as I'm concerned, you guys have a spot anytime we have a fest, if you guys can make it down.
Of course.
The only problem is that Canada being Canada, I don't even know. Can Canadians even come to the US right now? I don't even know.
Currently, as far as the time we're recording this, I don't think so. But you know, that could very much change in the next little while. I was thinking about that a lot as 2020 was progressing, and I was like, are we in a position where Snow and Flurry will be the first festival back, and will I even be able to go to it, like as someone to document it, or just someone to be a part of that festival? Obviously that year has passed, and now it's you know, coming up on, I guess, the rough timeline of that happening potentially again. So yeah, I don't know, honestly. Like I think, well first let me say, I really appreciate all the nice words that you were saying about some of those things. And you know, that was something that I, you know, when I brought the opportunity to the guys, I was like, this is a really big opportunity for us, and I just wanted to like make sure that we could deliver on a lot of those things. And like the Snow and Flurry recap episode that we did very early on in the podcast, where we were talking about all the stresses of all the flights, you know, not getting through customs right away and all that. Like I was like, I don't want to just like have to do that DM to Jesse to be like, hey, you put a lot of faith in me, but like the Canadian Airlines don't give a fuck about that, and like here's the situation. But I think it, like, you know, looking back, it's definitely made for a great story. And you know, obviously as soon as like we wrapped up year one, I think the last set we posted was the I think it was Relentless was the last set that we posted of that year.
Yep.
It was already like, my brain was like, how can I make next year better? Like, how can we bring more people? Can we bring different skill sets into the mix? Like, what are different content things that we can do? And so it pains me that all this pandemic stuff has put a halt on some of that, because I'm sure you guys have a lot of really cool ideas for when you guys can do that again safely.
Yeah.
And by association, I have really cool ideas to like help make the 2019 videos just seem like not like dog shit, but just like really just, bring it to that next level. And, that's what I've been doing like kind of with Wild Rose at the same time, like always trying to push the envelope a little bit more. I have all these ideas, and like that was a like like I think it was one of the highlights of everything that we've done with Scope, just like being able to see, like not even just like Minneapolis bands, but all these different bands from like the States. Like, that was the year that all these really rad bands from Oklahoma were coming through.
Mhm.
Tons, it like I just look back at like all the different podcasts that we've done and all these different things that we have coming down the pipe, and just like I wouldn't have made those connections without that opportunity to come down and film that. And like just thinking about hardcore shows or hardcore festivals in general, like there are all these moments and opportunities to make new friends, to make connections for your band, to like just like really actually like networking sounds like it's downplaying everything, but I think that there are so many great things that come from a hardcore festival versus just like this massive pit explosion for this one band. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
What's like something that either you've heard or like some of the other members of the team have gotten like a hey, like because of Snow and Flurry, like this happened, whether for my band or just for me personally, like has there been something that like a not like a piece of feedback, but like a testimonial where you're like, oh, okay, like there's like I'm doing something right here with this festival.
Um, that's tough. I mean, to me personally, I don't know if anyone's really ever, come up to me and said anything like that I can recall. But I mean, people show their thanks in different ways. Like they'll come up and be like, "Yo, like it's really cool that you all do this every single year, regardless of knowing that the turnout's going to be good or bad or whatever. Like, thank you for just doing it every time." And I mean, yeah, there's definitely been like local bands have gotten exposure and like kind of done up some things afterwards. I'm not saying it's because of us, but like I don't know. To me personally, from an outsider looking in, I would say that Snow and Flurry has, and I'm gonna get flack for this. I don't care. This is my opinion.
Okay.
Snow and Flurry has directly affected the trajectory of Stepping Stone as a band.
Yeah, I would agree on that.
I would hope that the guys aren't mad about that, because I love Stepping Stone, but like they started year 2 playing our fest. So they didn't play the first year, but Tim, one of the guys who used to help with the fest, he had like a connection with the guys in Stepping Stone. He's like, yo, we should get some Canadian bands down. And year 2 we did. And like, that's the goal every year. At least one Canadian homie. And as long as they're willing and wanting to play, Stepping Stone. Stepping Stone has spot reserved on the
Two
roster.
Canadians, one has to be Stepping Stone, and then fill in the blank for the other. That's funny.
Right. Or it could be even 3 or 4, like at least a couple, because like we love Canada. I love Canada, and I love to show love to the homies. And year 2, they've played every year since. So 2, 3, 4, and 5, they played every time.
Yeah.
And every time the reaction's better. People buy more merch. People know more songs. And like, yeah, they have a great record out. They have, they've been putting in the work. I'm not going to take credit for their hard work, but like, I feel like showing different bands and different people, bands from places they might not know about, gets it in the ear, and they're listening to it and they're showing their friends and stuff like that. So like, yeah, maybe it's a bold statement to say, but I feel like every year they've grown as a band, not because of us, but I'm not saying it doesn't hurt,
Right. Yeah. Well, I feel like like the multiple instances of them playing that, because I think in all the years that I was like trying to make it happen for me to come down, it's like I know Stepping Stone is at least going to be there, and then those things. But I remember the second that they started playing, it was like, whoa, like it felt like a Stepping Stone set in Western Canada, but just all Americans going crazy for them, giving them the same level of energy. And obviously, like they've had opportunities at like Flyover Fest and LDB one year, but for you guys to do the continual like thing, like it's that goes for any band. Like anytime you play somewhere and then you go back, it's a little bit bigger and it builds on itself. So no, I think the Stepping Stone set was the second one that we put out. So like clearly, people from the Midwest that were going to that got mad love for the monster fueled riffs.
Well, as they should. Those are some of the best dudes. They're some of the hardest workers. They write some hard riffs, like just all around great band, great dudes, everything. So it's like, obviously, like I am being a little bit facetious with, we helped, but like they're doing all the work, but we're just giving them a spot to shine.
Right. Well, I think some festival promoters, can see that and make a statement like that. Like clearly, Joe Hardcore had a huge impact on like Code Orange, as they were coming up through the Philadelphia scene. Like obviously, I'm trying to think like I'm almost trying to think of like certain festivals and like that one band that like really has played that multiple years and kind of came up through that.
Well, with us, we've had an iteration of War Prayer has played every year. The first year they were called, what were they called? It was before they were War Prayer. That doesn't matter. It was their first name, and they were a different band then. So the first year was that, but then the second year through this last one, it was War Prayer. So they played every year. Swing Low has played every year. And Stepping Stone has played every year since year 2. Souls has played a lot of those years. I think they played 4 out of 5, maybe 3 out of 5. Don't quote me on that. I don't have all of the lineups with me right now.
Right.
So we like to try and show, repetitious love to certain people. We wanted to have it be like one band from Minnesota, one band from South Dakota, one band from North Dakota play like every year, almost every year, because like Derek also grew up in South Dakota, different part of the state than I did, but like we have a lot of love for, home state, even if, the music scene isn't super popping. They got some cool bands for sure. And like, there's still a lot of people down there that come up and they drive to the fest or they fly to the fest and, they got love. So we got to show love back. And, Minnesota, obviously it's a little easier now being there. A lot more locals. I mean, there's a lot of great bands that we can put on this next one. Hopefully it's this year, but like I said, we'll see. But as soon as it happens again, like you guys, you just bring the whole team, like
we plan to.
You can do whatever, like just bring the all dressed Ridgies and bring all the buddies down and we'll hang out. We'll have a good time.
Well, I'll bring the entire Scope team. I'll bring all the bevs that I can fit into a suitcase, just like hand them out to all the homies. Honestly, there's a lot of different great things I hope to execute. I did want to talk, what was your favorite memory from the last year that Snow and Flurry happened, 2019, off the top of your head?
My favorite memory of 2019. It was really nice. So the venue that we had it at, they had like a hired sound person. So the year before, we all had to split sound duties, and I was kind of having a shit weekend. So I just stood behind the soundboard and just ran sound the whole time. Like I didn't really mosh. I didn't really talk to anybody. It was just like, I was in a bad headspace. I was not having a great time.
That was 2018?
2018.
Oh,
so
okay.
2019, it was nice that none of us had to run sound because they had a sound guy,
right?
That was provided by the venue, which was dope. And they also had like people working the door. So me and Derek were free to just walk around and like make sure bands had their stuff up next and like, you know, help people get off the stage and take care of any problems that might arise. So we didn't have to worry about like counting the people that came through the door and like taking money and then also running sound and like splitting. We were just able to like kind of relax a little bit and just take care of our thing that was going on.
Sure.
So that was really nice. And it gave me a lot of time to actually like be able to watch every band. And like, honestly, my favorite memory is just being able to watch my friends and people I know and hardworking bands put on some of the best sets I've seen them play. Not every band, obviously, you know, like, but almost every band had pretty much the best set I'd ever seen them play that fest. And that's kind of my favorite thing about it is you start working with some of these bands when they're young kids, you know, 17, 18, 19 years old. And then maybe they're not very good when they start out. And that's okay. Not everybody is. Like Swing Low was dog shit when we started. I can admit that. It's fine.
Right.
But it's like, as they play more shows and they gain more confidence and they start different bands and they find their own thing, they start to be a lot better. So watching the evolution from like, you know, being a kid to being a young adult to having like a super dope band that like everybody loves to watching people go off. It's really, really awesome to see. So like, that's kind of one of my favorite things about doing an annual fest every year is that you kind of get to see how people, their growth, you know, you get to see them go from like here to, you know, maybe way down here to like way up here. It's nice to see, you know?
Yeah, because you have that like context. Like for me, like a lot like I'm trying to think the bands that I knew of for sure were obviously some of the bigger acts like I knew who Advent was. I'd never seen them before, but obviously like Stepping Stone. I'm trying to think of all the different like I would say probably 85 to 90% of the bands never seen them before or even knew about them. But I just remember vividly on day one, I was like, man, this is really, really fun. And then like transgression played and I was like, holy fuck. Like it was just like the sky opened up and there was just lightning bolts coming down and people were just moshing harder than I've ever seen in a long, long time. Yeah. That set for me was definitely a highlight. Even just Gadget starting off day two with an absolute explode, like there was definitely like how you were alluding to before with the, you know, obviously a little bit of a dip in attendance when Marauder wasn't able to play, but like day two was definitely a lot more people, but like Gadget setting it off for like day two was insane. Yeah,
they had a great set. And honestly, Transgression we had play year 3 and year 5, and they were kind of they were like a power violence band the first time they played year 3, and that was honestly like my favorite set of the weekend that year. And then when they came back, you know, they changed their sound up a little bit and I still was blown away. You know, every time I see that band or had seen that band, because I guess they broke up, but they put on like just a great show. No matter what they were playing, they tore it down every time. And it was so dope to see them playing a completely different style and kids fucking losing their minds. It was so dope.
Yeah.
And that was one of the highlights. One of the highlights for me was that fucking Frost Coffin band.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Dude. Derek showed them to me and he was like, yo, so this band is coming up with I Am. They're on tour. It was Omen, I Am, and Frost Coffin, I think was the package.
Yeah.
He was like, what do you think? And he sent me the link and I listened to it and I just texted him back. I was like, what the fuck? He's like, it's the sickest thing ever, right? And I was like, yeah, or something, I guess. But I listened to it again and I was like, God, this is like Five Finger Death Punch. He's like, yeah, I know. It's fucking awesome. And I was like, listen, man, like the dudes in it are legit. The music is good. Like maybe not my cup of tea. We'll put them on. We'll see how it goes. And like watching them play live, it was like, I get it. I get it live.
Yeah.
Like on recording, I was like, okay, we'll give it a shot. And then after I saw him live, I was like, yep, okay, yep.
Yeah,
It's
I was
Texas switching tongues is what that is.
Yeah, I was like really like I think it was like similar but different for me. Like I listened to some of the recordings like, oh okay, this is interesting. And then seeing it live was like, oh okay, like I can kind of see. And then like I almost like went back to their discography and like listened to everything. And now I'm like fucking obsessed with that band. Like they
The
are
band is
so
so
catchy.
sick.
So
And
sick.
honestly, if I would have said no, I don't think so, like they still would have come up because they were on the package, but they wouldn't have had a show. And like, how lame would that have been? Well, not lame. I shouldn't say that word, but like, how dumb would that have been? Because like, they were sick and they were one of my highlights. So I'm glad. I was like, listen, whatever you say, man, like let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's bring them.
Yeah, I think like taking some risks like that with like again, like we were talking about before, like the different you know, having things to cleanse your palate. Like, you know, Frost Coffin might not have had the craziest mosh set of that entire weekend, but maybe that's not the goal. The goal is like here's a band that's like super rad, super catchy, super tight, and it kind of I felt like they almost like set up the whole like their style was like a perfect setup for I Am, which played like right after them, and that set was like oh my gosh, like I think when they played Hard to Kill, like it felt like the room was bouncing. Like it was insane. Yeah.
It was so sick. But honestly, my favorite part of the Frost Coffin set was that they had like a buddy come along who was like a guitar tech, but I'm pretty sure it's a gimmick. You know, like it's the guitar player like switched his guitar, like hand him a guitar, he'd hand him a new one, and then play another song. But I'm pretty sure I didn't ask, but I'm pretty sure it's a gimmick because it's like bigger bands have that guitar tech that comes out and like hands them another guitar. And maybe it's just because he was shredding so hard that it would come out of tune. He actually needed a guitar tech, but I'm like 90% sure it was like a gimmick or a gag because like every time he would come around the corner with a guitar and then like they'd trade off, I was like side stage just losing my fucking mind, just laughing hysterically because I was like, this is a hardcore fest. These guys got a guitar tech. Like, what's going on? But I'm fairly certain it was like a gimmick or a gag.
No, well, either or. If that guitar player is like that badass enough to have a guitar tech on call for, you know, any show, like props to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go ahead and say it was a gag because that's hilarious to me.
Right. I'm definitely gonna do that at the next Endgame show that we have back. I'll just have someone to be like, "Hey, can we trade guitars? But like, I only have one guitar, so we'll just trade back immediately. Like, it'll just be over."
Just have somebody come over and grab like your bandmate's guitar and then swap your guitars.
Right.
You guys only have one guitar player or two?
We just have one guitar. It's just me.
Oh, okay.
I think there's thoughts in the future of having someone do second guitar for bigger fests or like, you know, those kind of things. But it's pretty free, and I'm sure you feel this to a degree, you know, with Swing. Well, no, that's not true. Swing Low has 5 members now.
We have a second guitar player now. Yeah, we added Matt, who's from Iowa. He plays guitar for us, but did we play as a 4-piece or a 5-piece at that fest?
You played as a 4-piece, but I think you played one show before the pandemic, and I remember Don sharing something on his Instagram. He's like, I guess the cat's out of the bag or something like that.
So we played a local show and he came up. Nobody knew he was coming up. It was kind of funny. Actually. We told them about the show. Like we have a group chat with all 5 of us in it. And we were talking about playing and he didn't tell us he was coming. And we didn't even know he like knew all of the songs yet. Like we knew he was learning and we'd given them the songs and we'd practiced together a few times, but he, you know, lives in Sioux City, which is like 6 hours away or something like that. So we were like at the venue setting up and like Riff uses 2 cabs anyway. So he has one on his side and one on my side. And Matt just comes in the back door with his guitar and his head in his hand. And it's like, hey, where do I set up? And we all just kind of looked at each other. We were like, I guess we're playing as a 5-piece now, which is fine.
Yeah.
So he just showed up and we played a show and it went really well, honestly.
That's funny.
And then we did do a very short-lived tour right after, like, right in the beginning,
right.
like March,
Yeah.
when everything started to get shut down. So
was that with Closet Witch?
it was, yeah. So
Yeah.
it was supposed to be a 9-day run, and we ended up playing 3 days of it. And like every day we would like play another. We started in Sioux City, and then like day 9 and day 8 had dropped because they were on the East Coast.
Yeah.
And then we played the next city. I can't remember where it was. And then, day 7 and day 6 had dropped. So now it was a 5-day run. And we got to the third day and the rest of the days had dropped. And we're like, okay, well, like, let's just go home. It's like, it sucked. We stayed an extra day with the people of Closet Witch at like the house that they were crashing at. It was like in their hometown. So we were just like, like, can we just chill here for a day before we have to like drive back home? They were like, yeah, of course, stay as long as you want. Like, they are awesome people. It was awesome to be able to play 3 shows with them. Hopefully in the future we get to redo that whole thing and do the actual 9-day run, but we'll see. But it sucked, but we got to play those 3 as a 5-piece too. So I think we only played like 4 or 5 shows as a 5-piece before COVID shut everything down for us. And Matt was like, this is my fault. Every band I join like ends up breaking up or something happens and then we can't play.
Breaks up or a global pandemic comes into the picture.
Yeah. I was like, man, it's just a timing thing. Like it sucks. So
yeah. No,
it is what it is. We'll get back to it eventually. We've all got kind of other things going on. I wish I could say like, hey, we got some recordings done and whatever, but we've honestly just kind of taken the last year as kind of a break. We haven't really, Alex has got rot. Plus he's like working at this brewery called Disgruntled, which actually did like a rot collab beer.
Yes, I saw that. And I was like, okay, like he still has yet to send me some. So
I have some in my fridge. I don't drink. It's just there because like I wanted to support the homie. So I bought a 4-pack, but I was just like, what the fuck do I do with this? Because like
that's some real straight edge love. Like I won't drink this, but I'm still gonna support you and buy some. So that's
I mean it's a cool thing. Like I don't know anything about beer. It's like I think it's a sour, it's like a grape Kool-Aid sour or something like that.
Yeah.
It sounds dope. It probably tastes bad because beer tastes bad in my opinion, but
well, I'm a big fan of sours. So after this podcast, if you know the shipping up to Calgary, like I'll just pay for it and we'll get it my way.
Yeah, I can send you a can for sure. Or maybe 2. I don't know. I mean, as long as I have a can, it doesn't really matter.
Right. Here's a question. If Swing Low was doing some kind of beverage collab, what's the dream? Like sky's the limit.
So I would want to do coffee, and I think Alex would be with me on that because Alex, he's our drummer now, but so me and Alex would probably be down for coffee. Me and Don would be down for an energy drink. Riff, Alex, and Don would probably be down for beer.
But you would not be down for that.
Yeah. Well, honestly, like if I get to help make it, I don't really care. I'm the only straight edge guy in the band. Everybody else, is they drink or they do whatever. I'm not going to incriminate them, whatever. But like they live normal lives. They do things.
Right.
So it's like it's to be expected that like there's going to be a lot of like we've had weed merch in the past or we've had like whatever. it is what it is. Like I roll with the punches. So. I've even suggested like Swing Low do like grinders or something. And like, I'm the straight edge guy. I'm like, yeah, we should do grinders for like weed or like little mirrors, just for like a goof, just like, what's this mirror for? Oh, well, you know what it's for, but it's, but it's like, I just think it's goofy. So like, I would be down with whatever, but it honestly be cool to do like a coffee roast. There's a band in Minneapolis called Wanderer, and they just put their new record up for pre-order. It's really, really cool type stuff. If you've never listened to them, it's kind of like a darker Converge.
Oh, okay.
Kind of chaotic, like false grind type stuff. It's really cool. They have like a spice mix that they did with like a local spice maker in Minneapolis.
Whoa.
I think that's super cool. Like,
that is
like just like a seasoning salt, basically. What they chose their own ingredients, and like it's labeled, they're limited to like 69 of them or something. So something like that would be cool. But like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
well,
I'd be down for an energy drink or a coffee. If they wanted to do a beer, that'd be cool too. So
well, as soon as you said darker converge, I was like, oh, they're doing some kind of dark roast coffee thing. But like the doing some kind of spice, that's really creative. That's very cool.
or like Norma Jean back in the day did the barbecue sauce, like the Oh God, the barbecue sauce or whatever, when they put out
Oh,
the aftermath.
okay. Yeah, I didn't know about that. That's very interesting.
Like a bunch of a goofy merch shit like that. That'd be cool. But I'd be down for whatever. Like cross marketing across like stuff like that is fun. It
Mhm.
can be cool. So as long as like it's good and people like it and like we like the product, even if we can't all use the product,
Yeah.
it's like I would do swing low rolling papers, like I don't care. Like I have a sense of humor. Like I understand what it is. Like it's fine. I'm probably the only like vegan straight edge guy in Fargo. It is what it is. Like if we put out something that doesn't abide by my lifestyle, but it abides by the other four guys, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter to me. It's all just about having fun and like doing it together and stuff like that,
For sure. Just being a local Fargo dude there, like, what's one little local thing that you want to plug before we start to wrap up the show? Because again, like, I think a lot of people think about like, okay, I'm going to this place for either hardcore, but there's things you got to do before the show or check out beforehand. So if someone's coming to see Swing Low, in a local Fargo setting, what's a spot that you want to highlight before we start to wrap up here?
Sure. Youngblood Coffee is the best coffee I've ever had in my life. I'm not by any means like a coffee expert, but I've had coffee in a lot of different places, in some different countries and stuff like that too. It's like it's the best coffee I've ever had. And like I hit up somebody from Seattle who was like, "Hey, this is the best coffee you'll ever have," and I had coffee there, and like it was good, but it wasn't as good as Youngblood in my opinion. So Youngblood Coffee, that's my number one shout out.
Okay, cool. I'll have to check it out. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're ever back here, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll plug this real silly little idea, but as I've started to brainstorm when like shows are coming back, one idea that I have, and I might want to start do one, see if it works, and then start to implement it in other things. But if we were coming down for like Snow and Flurry or if we were anywhere for any reason for hardcore, going out on the street and doing like hey, do you listen to local music, and then like playing the local bands to just like to random people on the street. So if we were in Fargo for even just to hang out, and then it's like, okay, here's like the playlist with all the different Fargo hardcore bands, and we're just going to play it to anybody who's either walking their dog or getting their groceries or whatever, and be like, this is your local scene, like what do you think of it? And I'm sure there would be some wacky responses because you're getting any
sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Jesse, this has been a really fun chat. It's been a long time since we've had even the closest thing to a full-on face-to-face. So really respect what you're doing in Fargo and Minneapolis through Snow and Flurry, and just you've been a big support to me since kind of the get-go, and that's something that like I'll never forget and I continually think about. So
for sure.
shout out to you, shout out to Swing Low. The last
Thanks.
portion,
you, man. For sure.
The last portion of the podcast that I always ask my guests is a favorite mosh story that they would like to share.
Ooh,
so that could be anything, whether it happened to you, you did it to someone, something you just saw side stage at a show, whatever's the first thing to your mind is how we start to wrap up.
Man, that's tough. The first thing that comes to mind is so one time some of the Fargo crew rolled out to Minneapolis to see, it was like Twitching Tongues, and Code Orange, a couple other bands at this like community space. And it was like right after I Am King came out. It was like I Am King, that kind of tour.
Sure.
And you know, the mosh was going pretty hard. I was moshing a little bit. I'm not a huge mosher anymore. I'm a little too old for that. Like I mean, especially now, I get out there. If there was a show to happen and I was moshing, you know, like I'm 33, you know, most of the kids there are like 16 to like 19. I'm almost scientifically old enough to be their father. I'm almost like twice as old as like some of the people going to shows. Like, I can't be like breaking 15, 16, 17-year-old kids' noses and stuff like that. I can't do that. You know, it's just when the riff takes me, I get in there and then I get winded and then I get out. You know, it is what it is. You know, it's
that's the way of the old head mosh.
Right.
I'm in and out.
I was moshing a little bit and I was standing to the side and like this riff hit and I looked to my right and my buddy Tim, who lives in Denver, he's doing tattoos down there now. He's an apprentice at this cool shop. I can't remember the name, but shout out to Tim. He helped with Snow and Flurry for a while. And I looked at him and I made eye contact with him. And there was a whole group of people like to his right. And we both had the same idea at the same time. And he like kind of bent over a little bit and I sprinted towards him and I rolled over his back and I just threw my legs into the entire like wall of people that were there. And there was like probably, 6 to 10 people. I just knocked them all over. And then I like, got back up and like ran across to the other side and smashed the other side too. And like,
oh my gosh, that's too funny.
As soon as like he put his back down and I rolled over him, he was just like laughing hysterically. And I couldn't believe that I did it. I was like, I see my opportunity. I don't know, but I'm doing it anyway. Right. It's like, fuck it, who cares?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure the people didn't appreciate it. And, whatever. But looking back, like that's, I don't know. I'm not the hardest mosher in the room, I try not to hurt people if I can help it. I don't pull my punches either. So if you're there and you get hit, like it just happens, and I've definitely been, split open and I've broken some things and, I've definitely broken my hand and stuff like that. So it's like, it is what it is, but I'm by no means like a mosh god, I'm pretty much side stage or I'm in the back or
Please change your Instagram to mosh god after this.
No, not a chance.
No, it's too funny just to hear just like the riff hits and you're just like the telepathic messaging like, oh, you think of what I'm thinking? I sure am, Jesse. And just
and honestly, like I don't know if he was, and maybe he was just like bending down to catch his breath. I don't know. But when we made eye contact, it looked like we were kind of thinking the same thing.
Sure.
And he kind of gave me the cue and I was like, that's it. And I sprinted across as fast as I could. And I like ninja rolled over him and just like took everybody out. It was really funny, but
yeah. No, that
only to me, I guess, but
yeah. No. Yeah. If I was to have any of those other people on the podcast, they're like, I'll tell you a terrible mosh story. I was at this show. I was minding my own business. That's really great. I feel like that covers all the bases of a good mosh story, in my opinion. Jesse, sure. All your band links, the Snow and Flurry links will all be in the description of the video, sure. in the show notes. But if there's anything else you want to end on, send the people off with, the floor is yours for whatever you got.
Ooh, that's tough. All I gotta say is like, life now is kind of weird. For everybody, the best thing that we can do for ourselves and the people around us is to just be patient. People are fighting their own battles. People are doing their own work. And sometimes we can't see it from the outside. It's happening on the inside. Right. So it's like, just, I don't know, be nice. If we're nice to each other, we just talked about me, like, ruining somebody's day by like completely annihilating them at a show. But like, and in all reality, like being kind and patient to the people around you, even if they aren't in your life, even if you're not friends, like especially if you're not friends,
definitely
can make all the difference because like we're all trying to grow, we're all trying to live, we're all trying to be better, and we're all just trying to make it through what we're in right now. Like if I could offer myself the biggest piece of advice ever, in my early 20s is like, maybe don't be a dick. But like, even now, like, I'm realizing in my early 20s, I was going through some shit I didn't know I was going through until a year ago. And I'm dealing with it now. So it's like, I don't want to get too heavy, but it's like everybody has some trauma in their past. Sometimes it manifests in weird ways. And sometimes people don't realize you're doing that because of other shit you had no idea was happening. And then you have to deal with that. So it's like, my biggest thing I could say to anybody is just like, be patient and kind. I try, I'm guilty of not doing it in the past. I'm guilty of being an asshole for a lot of my life. But for the past, 5-6 years, I've been really trying to like be kind and be patient, not only to myself, but everybody around me. And like, maybe it's too little too late for, and not everyone's going to like you and you can't change your opinions. It is what it is. But that's all I got to say, really. I mean, sorry to end on like kind of a downer, but like, that's,
I don't think it's a downer per se. Like I think, I think people in general aren't patient when it comes to like, not even just like their day to day, like, like you can clearly see people who are like, why is the drive through not going fast enough? Or why am I hitting every red light? But then there's just things of like, why am I not at this point in my life? And, everyone else is passing me. And I think everyone works at their own pace. And I think we're all running our own race. And, the length and the routes are all different. And I think being kinder and more patient on yourself versus like thinking like things need to turn over in a day, five weeks, whatever it is. But I do think that like, good things take time, whether it's, you're trying to do something cool with your band or you're just trying to get in a good mental place. Like, don't be so hard on yourself that, you had a bad day when it comes to, your mental strength or whatever. Like, just reset. And, over time, things will build, things will get better, things will get easier. And so definitely disagree that you end on a downer. I think you end on a really important point that that I think is a good way to end the episode. So
Okay. Thank you.
like I said, Jesse, mad respect to you, mad respect to all the Fargo homies who are listening and watching this. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We'll definitely do it again very soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I apparently really love to talk. So yeah, bring me back anytime if you want. And I'll just talk for hours about probably nothing, but it's okay.
Maybe we'll do a podcast just off of FYA 2022 or 2023, whatever year it happens, where we'll both go down and it'll be our like review podcast.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
Yeah, that does sound fun.